Oh, there's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Well, hello, BookTube. I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with my Victober 2021 TBR. Victober is one of my favorite readathons on BookTube, and I am stoked yet again. Is it my fourth? My fifth Victober? I'm not sure, but here I am. This is actually a redo of the introduction, because I filmed my TBR on September 1st, and I think overnight that night is when the Victober announcement videos went out. So I was kind of talking about stuff that I didn't know anything about because I didn't have announcement videos. Those are now on, and there was other things about my intro I wanted to tweak a bit. So there's going to be a costume change, and the majority of what you're going to watch here is filmed on September 1st, and here it is. I don't know what it is, September 19th or something. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. This is a readathon hosted by Katie of Books and Things, Kate Howe, and Lucy the Reader. I will put Katie's announcement videos. I think they're all the same. So Katie's is linked in the show notes. They have great reading challenges and prompts and whatnot, which I typically, nothing personal against the Victober people who put this lovely readathon on, but I don't follow challenges or prompts anymore in my readathons. I just like to go rogue and go my own way with what's jumping out at me for Victober. So, the last thing that I want to say before I go back to what I filmed 19 days ago is that this year I have decided to avoid England almost completely. I think England is overread, gets too much attention during Victober, and there's a lot of great literature or important literature outside of the border of England. So I said it much more bitchily in the first take, so, you know, I do think that, but I didn't need to be quite as bitchy as I was in take number one, so now let's carry on with my video. Going farther afield this year, so I'm going to have fun with that. The first one I chose probably the most recently because I saw that this is Mel of Mel's Bookland Adventures Read Around the World Book Club pick for October, specifically because it qualifies. Wonderful Adventures of Mrs. Seacole in Many Lands by Mary Seacole. Written by according to the blurb, a free black woman in Jamaica in the early 19th century, about her long and varied life. This is an autobiography. That's all I know about it, so it must have been published in the early 19th century. I see Katie has read and quite liked it. Mary Seacole, born 1805 in Jamaica, died in 1881 in London. Wikipedia describes her as a British-Jamaican nurse, healer, and businesswoman. You go, girl. I love that. Set up, I think it was a nursing station called the British Hotel behind the lines during the Crimean War. Her autobiography was published in July 1857 in Britain. The first autobiography written by a black woman in Britain. Okay, I'm looking forward to reading that. So that's my first book. And the second one, we're going to Ireland. Esther Waters by George Moore. And this will be a buddy read between Joe Smith and myself, because we read a story by George Moore in that otherwise fairly missable, mediocre anthology of British short stories. We really liked his, and so we decided to give his most well-known novel a try. Esther Waters, published in 1894. George Moore, born 1852 in County Mayo. And this novel is about a young working-class woman with strong religious beliefs who takes a position as a kitchen maid at a horse racing estate. She is seduced and abandoned and forced to support herself and her illegitimate child any way that she can. So that sounds like a gripping story. George Moore ended up in... Oh, he got mixed up with Lady Gregory that Yeats was so mixed up with. And... No, he stayed in Ireland. He lived in London after 1911. But up until then, so 2/3 of his life was lived in Ireland. Then he moved to London and wrote historical fiction. And I'm going to read a Victorian novel from Canada. I'm not sure it's a novel, but it's a Victorian... It's one of Canada's first famous books. Roughing It in the Bush by Susanna Moodie. I have never wanted to read it, and now I do, and I'll explain why. The full title is Roughing It in the Bush or Forest Life in Canada, and I think it's a memoir. First published in London 1852 and then finally published in Toronto 1871. She immigrated to Upper Canada, which became Canada later, near what is now modern-day Peterborough, Ontario, in the 1830s, and it's a memoir of her experiences and how she survived. Until very recently, it sounded like one of the most boring books written in Canada or about Canada, and that is a really strong statement because almost everything about Canada is so boring, but this one just seemed to be the creme de la creme of monotonous Canadian literary output. But I want to read it now because I am reading this fantastic Indigenous novel, Nupaming, The Cure for White Ladies by Leanne Betasamosake Simpson, and this is an Indigenous literary response to Roughing It in the Bush, which I didn't realize until quite recently that was a big part of the impetus. So Simpson is writing back and writing against Roughing It in the Bush. So I am looking forward to, well, I'm still reading this, so I'll probably end up reading them in tandem. Now that I've become such an anti-colonialist, reading colonialist bullshit literature is fun. I said I was ignoring England, but I think English women are okay. It's the men. So I'm going to read Deerbrook by Harriet Martineau. But I will say this is the one that if I run out of time, I will put off until next October, or I'll just read it at another time. I don't need to only read Victorian literature during Victober. I'm well aware of that. I didn't realize it was that old. Published in 1839. So Martineau sounds fascinating. She was born in 1802 in Norfolk, died 1876 in Westmoreland. She's described as an English social theorist, and many consider her to be the first female sociologist. That doesn't interest me particularly. The young Princess Victoria, so we're not talking Queen Victoria, it was in the days before she became queen, was interested in Martineau's writing and invited her to her 1838 coronation. Oh my God. But she did write at least one novel, a whole bunch of social theoretical political tracts. Those probably don't interest me. But this novel sounds really interesting. It centers on the Ibbotson sisters, Hester and Margaret. They arrive at the village of Deerbrook to stay with their cousin, Mr. Grey, and his wife. And there is speculation throughout the village that one of them might marry the local apothecary, Edward Hope, and it goes from there. Well, that sounds pretty standard fare. Oh, this one is 656 pages in print form. I'll be doing it on ebook. So this might be one that I will not get to if other things crowd it out, but it is one that I'm interested in. So this is the maybe one, because last year instituted a new tradition during Victober, and that is to read a book about Queen Victoria every Victober. I mean, it's Victober. I even thought about delaying filming this TBR video until the book arrives in the mail, but that's silly, so here's the gif. But I'm going to read a full-fledged biography of her, one of the few that I haven't already read. Victoria, A Life by A.N. Wilson. Okay, this is kind of like editing Sean, September 19th Sean, with a parenthetical insert. I think that A.N. Wilson biography of Queen Victoria, it's just too long. I won't finish it in a month. So, and it still hasn't arrived in the mail, and it's September 19th or something like that. I can't remember the date, but it's something like that, September 19th. So, I'm going to read another Queen Victoria book that is more of a microbiography, that is called Curtain Down at Her Majesty's. And I forget the long subtitle, but basically it's first-person accounts of the death of Queen Victoria by people that eyewitness accounts, or probably her family and servants and whatnot, by Stewart somebody or other. See, I was trying to remember all the stuff and it's gone. Stewart Davidson or something. Here's the GIF. And it's about 250 pages, something like that, on ebook. I'm going to read that one for Victober. I'm very, very interested in the full-length authoritative study of Queen Victoria's life by A.N. Wilson, because I am wanting to do a deep dive into what political power she actually had compared to her consort, Prince Albert, and compared to her prime ministers. I expect that the political power of the monarch continued to ebb during her long reign, but I'd like to know a lot more about it, and especially I didn't feel comfortable with the claim that what's-his-name made, the Bloomsbury guy. He wrote a biography of her that I read last year. I can never remember his name. But anyway, here's the gift. I read that one, and he really was dismissive of that she was almost controlled by the strong men around her. And I mean, she's a constitutional monarch, so she should be controlled to a certain degree by her prime minister, so I wouldn't quibble with that. But I've always had an image of her as being kind of indomitable, censorious, imperious, and this biography by what's-his-name, the Bloomsbury guy, made her seem almost meek. And it also in connection to Prince Albert, kind of getting his political agenda met through her without her really realizing she was being manipulated. And I've never read that, and I've read a lot about Queen Victoria. So that's why I wanted to read the Anne Wilson book, but I'm not going to get to it in October. I'm just going to read about the death of Queen Victoria. And that will be fun, interesting. It'll be interesting. All right. So that's my Victober TBR. I think it's fabulous. What do you think?